Well, everyone, welcome to the podcast. We have the one and only Miss Sandy Miarecki of the Republic. She is the acting Secretary of State for the entire Republic, and she's going to be giving her monthly insights as to the latest updates on her end about everything. And of course, we'll be touching on geopolitical and financial matters. As always, we enjoy these conversations and where the road takes us. If you are new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share so that others can gain and the knowledge we've been afforded. As you know, Sandy is a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, was a test pilot, one of the best of the best, and is actively involved in the Republic, the correct one, and she's going to further illustrate that point in our discussion today. Sandy, how are you doing today, my dear?
Great, John. It's good to see you again.
You too. Always a pleasure. Look forward to this. Okay, so starting out fast and furious, talk a little bit about the latest updates, what your role entails, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, so I still have many roles in the Republic. Just to hit the highlights for any new viewers. We were given a constitutional republic by our founding fathers. We ended up losing it starting basically during the Civil War and then the Organic Act of 1871 when a corporation completely took over everything. That has just gotten worse over time with the Federal Reserve, 1913, income tax, IRS, et cetera. And now we are where we're at, which is essentially a corporate crime syndicate is what I call it. It's more like a mafia than anything, and it's a pretend government. It can't be a government.
Mm-hmm.
So patriots just like us were approached by the White Hats 2008 timeframe and said, can you restore the Republic? And they says, well, we're going to darn do our best, and so that's what they did. And by November of 2010, they were able to sign a declaration of sovereign intent, which is essentially kind of like a new Declaration of Independence, where they had reseated the abandoned Republic. After doing all the research, they realized that the Republic had never been abolished. And so it was just sitting there, gathering dust. And so all those seats just needed to be reseated. So we started from, scratch. We went back to the county level, assembly level, state level, got a state, essentially a constitutional convention again, like there was before, Continental Congress, however you want to address that, and a quorum of states, and they signed this document, and that reestablished the Republic. So November of 2010 is the first time anyone had done that. Filed all the proper paperwork in the international systems, and therefore let the international world know that we were back. And so that's what the Republic is. That's what we stand for. And we are an interim. The representatives currently sit in these seats are interim only, temporary. We all leave our positions as soon as real elections occur. The first Republic election since 1860. So we revert to December of 1860 because that's right before the states started to leave the Union. You can't really leave in a perpetual union. But there's going to be your Masonic, Jesuit, and other influences, bar attorneys especially, are going to tell you, oh, yeah, you can. You can leave at any time. It's like, oh, no, you can't. That's not what it says. And so we've got another infiltration going on, of course. And this is the third one. We had a 2012 to 13, a 2016 to 17, and now a 2025. And it's the same dang playbook. They start trying to take over the Senate. Trying to establish a quorum in the Senate, which needs to have 67 minimum attending in order to do anything. And they established a quorum with 10. Like, okay. So there's how you know it's not the real Republic, is when you don't even follow the rules at all,
Mm.
So the people that are the leaders, influencers, or whatever of this other group is a former 32-degree Mason from his own admission, and several others that are of very questionable background, probably Jesuits, bar attorneys, IRS, CIA, FBI. I mean, the three letters are back. We know this. And the reason we know this is because the splinter group is what we call them, claimed that they were going to get control of our members website, which is, the one where we have people log on as electors, right? And say, we want to support the Republic. And not a month later, it was attacked and taken down. The sophistication of the attack was so intense and so high, high sophistication, that the IT folks that work in banking security said they've never seen anything like this before, and it had to be three-letter agencies because it was that bad. So we're still rebuilding. We're almost ready. We're starting to get things back up and running slowly, but so that's essentially what's been going on with the Republic. Now, your question, sir, was
Yes,
what?
ma'am. Thank you for that. Thank you for that perfect segue. So with that in mind, I think this kind of is a good touch point to your thesis of where you are, where things are, et cetera, the delineation points. There was some discussion on one of our channels, or some comments, questions, if you like, about what is the formal process of legitimizing the correct republic. In other words, how can you differentiate the real McCoy from the fake ones, about the election process, signatories, who decides, panels, things of that nature. So can you, if you don't mind, kind of share that deep dive process with the audience in order to give clarity and comfort to the fact that you are in fact in the correct one?
Okay, so I could go into some smaller details, but I think the thing that would convince your viewers and listeners the most would be, um, over time, I have contacted or been contacted by several insiders of various levels and various functional groups. My primary insiders are on the financial side, and through those connections, and we've had one of them on our training calls so that questions can be answered there from people in the Republic. And one of the questions that I asked was, how do we know? Well, first of all, here's the claim from the splinter group, is that the former president who went to prison was no longer the president because he was in prison, and a new president was installed, claims that in the splinter group, he has been made trustee over some funds that were actually offered to President Trump to pay off the then national debt, was 2017 timeframe, 21 trillion. And to have the president claim that he's been made a trustee of those funds, when we know that those funds were transferred or were about to be transferred to the Treasury or to Trump or wherever he wanted it, and it was intercepted, hijacked, redirected to China. And we know this for a fact because it can be tracked. And so for this former president to be claiming to be the president of the splinter group, and that he's a trustee of the 21 trillion, means that he works for China, which is interesting because the splinter group changes their mode of operation about every 3 or 4 weeks. And their latest one is, oh, no, we're not destroying the Republic. We are the Republic, but they're calling themselves the People's Republic. And I say, well, you're missing 2 words, of China, at the end. So, yeah, they're not the Republic. And they get so many things wrong. It's shutting people down, censorship, the extreme way that you get into their meetings is you have to be invited and get a special code, and then your attendance and your loyalty is challenged upon entry. It's like, what in the world? That's not a republic. This is the people's government, and they just don't get it. Oaths of office don't mean anything to them because they've already taken oaths to this republic and just said, I changed my mind. And they're just going off and doing their own thing. So we just have to warn people, you've got to judge by the fruits. It's what the Bible says. So you judge by their fruits. You watch what they do, watch what they say. That's not what we do and what we say. So we've been guaranteed by these insiders who actually know about those funds and or know someone who controls those funds, that this is the republic with standing, authority, jurisdiction. And we are the ones that are going to get those funds. And we've been told this multiple times, and the other group is not. So how's that? Is that a good one?
Yeah, and it's just anything that will help people get a better sense of, again, truth from fiction, what is real and what is not. We're just trying to get as much as we can down to the center of the bullseye, right? And that's what you said on the last podcast about the straw man accounts. You can see that tied in with, Doge and all that. Obviously, I know you don't have the exact answer. I don't expect that, but Uh, they've been, if you notice on the debt clock, winding back the monies back to the people, tying into the monies you were just talking about. Everybody wants to know the $1 billion question. When are those monies going to come back to the people? Again, not with any expectation of an exact date, of course, but what's your overall hypothesis or sense of things on that?
Well, we've talked briefly about this before.
Mhm.
What these insiders, and I've asked them, I said, what is the sequence of events? And we've gone through a couple of different like what ifs, okay, what if this happened first or that happened first? And it seems like everything has to happen within just a few days, maybe a week of each other. So the Nasara Jasara, and I just want to warn everybody that the insiders I talked to say that the stuff you find online about this, 95% of it is incorrect. So there is Nasara Jasara. It has been signed, I think, as far as I can say, because my insiders all of a sudden got very quiet when I tried to discuss it. And I said, so then I have to cage my questions. Hypothetically, when or if Nasara is instituted, would this be a normal part of that process? So I can talk hypothetically. But because of the way that they've become quiet and guarded and hiding more or less behind their NDA properly,
Mhm.
that something has already happened. So
Yeah.
what phase we're in, I don't know. But Nasara Jasara, at least Nasara, whether Jasara happens, the global version of that right away, I don't know. But Nasara, standing up the Republic, the revaluations, and the takedown of the corporation. I guess just say corporations, right? Because every
Mhm.
country is a corporation. Zimbabwe, Zambia, all the
Yeah,
way,
yeah, yeah,
Algeria, A to Z, right? They're all. So you just go on Dun and Bradstreet. You can look them all up.
right.
So that's the way I've been told by these folks that are inside this process. QFS is working and
Mhm.
is already doing transactions. The big problem, I don't know how we're going to solve this one, is that QFS is actually using the Swift backbone. That doesn't sound so secure to me. I'm just saying.
No, I think the answer though is XRP with the ISO 20022 blockchain infrastructure that will circumvent that. That's already being worked. I think once Paul Atkins formally releases XRP from a Ripple from any wrongdoing, which we all know is bogus,
Right.
that's just a matter. They have a deadline for the 25th of this month. I think it'll be much sooner because of Trump's 200 plus trade deals, which we both know he's already worked integrated behind the scenes. It was just all time for a very specific effect, as you were kind of alluding to. And he's got to get it done the next 3 weeks. We're already at that. We're already coming to that point.
Well, he wasn't just sitting on his hands and playing golf for 4 years. Let's just
I
say
know
that.
it's laughable when people say that. It's
I
just
know.
like he owns all these courses. He doesn't even have time to hardly play them. So I don't know what they're talking about, but that's TDS syndrome right there, all on its face. Well, let's go back to what you've been saying very consistently, to your credit, Sandy, as a point of accuracy, is you've always said very consistently on my podcast, anyone else you've been on, that by the end of May, everything should take hold. And if it didn't, something's wrong. We've got the states fairs coming up, I believe, on let's see, Memorial Day is what, the 26th this year, 3 weeks from now. So somewhere in that week, we'll say, for the conservative sake, 29th, 30th, the end of the month, dovetailing nicely into June. And then you have Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, Treasury Secretary, coming out and saying over the weekend that July 4th was the hard date deadline for the big bill. And for that to happen, everything would logically have to go sequentially in the months of May and June. It just kind of, from a practicality standpoint, makes sense. Does that ring true for you?
Yes, and we have to remember also that the white hats are going to pick the option with the least amount of violence and death, always. And so if that means you have to drag it out longer, which is kind of where we're at now, so they're not going to drop a whole bunch of big things on us all on one day or 1 week. They're going to draw it out. They're going to let, drop something big, let it, kind of
Marinate.
through the system, marinate. Yeah. And then maybe the next week they'll drop something else. So that's what we expect. And so that, again, works very well with what you just said.
So let's talk, thank you. Let's talk about that for a second, explore the space, Sandy, a little bit further, that we have the cachet with you to do that. So now we have Trump coming out and, putting out comms about 2028, which we know fraud vitiates everything. He's got to return the stolen diamonds. The 2020 election, as he's always maintained, was stolen from him. Now people are starting to slowly get, I'm saying on the mainstream of society, starting to slowly come around to that notion, whether they know it or not.
Mhm.
Two questions. How does the Republic play a role in that? And two, obviously that's part of Nasara Jasara. You've got to return that. Would that be the dividing or delineation point whereby he is the last president of the corporation and steps into the Constitution?
Yes. Now we have to remember again that you have to be elected into the Republic presidency. And so how do you do that? Well, by the Constitution, a Republic people, we don't have that right now. We have corporate people, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's been tricked into being debt slaves to the system. So a Republic people in a Republic election, haven't had that since 1860, going through the Republic states. So your Secretary of State, your state legislatures verifying their election and their results. Then the Republic Electoral College, the Republic, on January 6th, the traditional counting of the electoral votes. None of that has happened for Trump. And so he can't, quote, step into the Republic presidency. He would need to be elected into it. And since 2008, that's what we've been told. This Republic has been told that we will be responsible for overseeing that first Republic election because we are the Republic. We have reseated it. And so are we going to have a lot of help and need a lot of help? Absolutely. So there's no doubt about that. But we will be in charge of ensuring the first free and fair elections. Well, who knows, even if ever, because they're probably all been manipulated by the cabal from day one.
Yeah.
But that's our job. And so we're going to be using a lot of military intelligence assets in order to make sure that the candidates that are running are actually good candidates and get these people in. If we're going to have any chance, we have one shot at this. So we have to do it the right way the first time. So that's what we're told. And we've been told that. So we have to think that way, prepare that way. Of course, as a National Secretary of State, my job is to make sure that all the states have the resources and possible methods, because of course each state runs their own election, but we have to hold them to the Constitution, the national Constitution. They have to follow that. And if they don't, then we could be the bad guy. So that's the only thing we can do at the national level, is to insist on the national Constitution and following it. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how Trump would have to run again. Now I've seen two actually competing things. I've seen a Trump 2028 hat.
Yeah.
And I think he's trolling them, and he's a master troller. So that's awesome. I don't know if you've seen the Trump face on the Pope.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The gold
Uh,
comms. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he's trolling
The
whatever,
Vatican.
whatever you want to call the Vatican. Yeah. I was going to say the Catholics, but he's not. He's trolling the Vatican.
The Vatican. Yeah.
And so yeah, so he's going to have to run again in whatever election we have. When is that? Is it this November? Is it next November? Is it going to be in November? Timelines, you and I both know we can't talk timelines. We can only talk sequences of events and
Right.
how things should occur because of what we know. And that's all we can do.
Yeah, we gauge the breadcrumbs and the bits of information to put a storyline together for our audience to try to give them the best sense of clarity, comfort, and reasonable, I think is a good word, expectation of how things could or should play out.
But the continued reference to Memorial Day this year is just like,
it
can't just be trolling.
No.
It doesn't feel like trolling to me.
I mean, if that's not a bullseye or a big, line across, drawing a line across the sand, if you will, I don't know what is. You and I talked about this offline, so I think it's a good complement to this discussion, as always, because everything kind of intertwines, intersects. We were talking about in terms of the reset. I know everybody here is all keyed up about that, and rightly so. You and I discussed about Iraq, and I'm going to show a couple slides in a moment to support this discussion. But they've got a big summit, Arab summit, coming up in Baghdad next week, 13th to the 16th. Now, we just had Fuda Soon, the finance minister, come to DC, if you recall, 2 weeks ago. Well, just about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half. It'll be 2 weeks this Friday, for those who are retentive about that stuff. Basically, in the recent past, he was in DC. Now, what a coincidence! We know there's none in the kingdom of heaven, or but biblically, that now we have this big summit timed for effect just 2 weeks later, just a little over 2 weeks later. And President Trump, I believe, is slated in some capacity with his representatives to be there. So talk a little bit about that and what you were sharing with us. Were you sharing with me offline, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. So I know a lot of people, probably a lot of people in your audience, are all waiting for the Iraqi dinar revaluation and several of the other country revaluations, such as Vietnam and Zimbabwe and others. So what we think we know, because I'm not an insider, but I can kind of read them when they don't talk about things, right? Like we just talked about, is
Mhm.
that because Iraq's fiscal year started April 1st, level one revaluations have started, had
Right.
to, because otherwise they couldn't start with their new contracts that they had renegotiated based upon the new value of their currency.
Mhm.
That all happened before April 1st. And so that was a deadline. And so it had to have happened. So, the whales, the very, very, very large banks, trusts, whatever, are probably already dealing in the revaluation.
Right.
So we've got an issue because, of course, Iran and Iraq, big powder kegs over there, generally speaking.
Big brother, little brother.
Yeah, a little bit. And it used to not be that way. It used to be two big brothers fighting. Then they were taken down by us,
Mhm.
Iraq, all right?
Mhm.
And so much of their stuff is actually going to our banks, which is totally raping and pillaging, and we've got to stop that. Hopefully that's what happens with the reval. So now Iran, in this whole mess, is providing a lot of the petroleum products to a lot of other countries, including China, Russia, and several others. And Trump has just come out now with, I believe it's an executive order, although it might just be a statement. I'm not sure. I got to double check that.
Mhm.
That anyone who buys Iranian oil is going to have huge sanctions, like 100% cut off embargo, of products. Well, that's China. Well, he's already attacking them with these so-called tariffs, that he said that China has this the tariffs on us, and they don't. It was a trade deficit that he was calling tariffs. It's like, okay. And so then there are tariffs, and now Walmart was telling China, well, China, you got to pay them. And China went, we're shutting down factories, we're stopping our orders. And Walmart says, oh, well, I guess we'll pay the tariffs. It's because otherwise they got nothing, right? They're going to shut themselves down. So Walmart's going to stay in business for probably at 2 times the price of what you were paying before, but at least the shelves won't be so empty. Um,
Well, yeah, because she's making substitute deals with all these other countries like Vietnam, which sets up perfectly for trade. And don't forget, Sandy, it makes the U.S. products that we are trying to import over there less disproportionate because they weren't buying our products before. And as you
right.
know, just to complement what you're saying, Iraq is now no longer buying electricity from Iran, or that's being cut off. And I think you're right in the sense that you won't have to be concerned about Iraq being raped and pillaged anymore because they've signed a 3-year budget with the Kurds and with Iran. So there's sort of a 3-year ceasefire, if you will, between them. After 3 years, that's probably another issue, but at least the U.S. won't be directly involved anymore. Our hands will be out of the proverbial cookie jar.
Right. Well, the other thing to think about, though, is this is the public side.
Right.
What's going on behind the scenes that, the curtains, 6 curtains back, and we
Yeah.
have no idea. It's all, hidden from us. So
Correct.
that's the part that we don't know. And that's the part that could get us because we don't know. But so that's the latest in terms of turmoil, I guess you could call it, in that region.
Mhm.
The good and the bad happening simultaneously. And then, so Trump's saying this about you cannot buy Iranian oil. So he seems to be doing, the bidding of Israel or I'd say the Israeli government, because I don't think it's the people by
No,
any
no, no, no.
stretch. Just like here, we have Americans, we have just normal people, and it's the government that's super corrupt, and it's the same thing that's happening over there. Anyways, so out of one side of his mouth, don't buy Iranian oil, and on the other side, oh, we'll see you at the conference in Baghdad.
Well, yeah, that's why you have to read between the lines. And you're right. We, humanly speaking, can't see 6 levels back, but
Mm-mm.
Jesus, Yeshua can. He heard the conversations we didn't. And that actually is a perfect segue, Sandy, for me to show you a couple of slides.
Okay.
Per the late great Kim Clement, posthumously, is one of the greatest modern prophets of our time, as we know without dispute. This is a very good sign, not good, but a telling sign of what he said: when things seem at their worst, I will free my people. Well, if we look over here, breaking news: Israel is bombing Yemen. You see that?
No, I didn't see that. Is it just today? Oh, it
That's
is just
today.
today.
Yeah, that's
I missed
within
that one.
about half an hour ago. And then this came out. I'm going to play this for you. So just bear with me.
فاشل يا صهيوني فاشل فاشل والله لن نتوقف عن إسناد غزة مهما فعلتم ومهما أجرمتم ومهما ضربتم فقط كل ما تفعلونه استهداف للمنشآت المدنية مقدرات الشعب.
ضربة معطن جديدة
أكيد هذه الضربة في مصنع الأسمنت.
دم مصنوع ولا محطة؟
Okay, so that was in translation. Israel is smashing the Houthis right now. So we're seeing that inflame up. What I think is going to happen, Sandy, I want to get your take on it, is I think that the summit next week is hugely important for two things. I showed a video on a previous podcast prior to you today with our buddy Joe Williams that was showing a lot of emphasis on Iraqi trade and tourism and a sales pitch as to why Iraq is a good place to go visit, travel, or live. Showing the diversity of faith and showing the diversity of music and sports and culture and food and all that. It also had the Central Bank of Iraq building, which is going to be the largest building in the Middle East, by the way, surpassing, that of, say that fast 3 times, of what's some of the larger buildings in Dubai. Because really Iraq is going to be slated as Dubai 2.0 with even more resources. That's what the world is about to summarily find out, which we know in our little subgroup, little subterranean world here in Trutherville. So I think next week's summit is two things. It's probably going to signal the official return of Iraq back to the international stage. And I think it's going to set up the grave surrender, per Kim Clement's prophecy, of the hand of Iran coming off the hand of Iraq and separating the piles. And he can make a peace deal with that, like he's working on with Ukraine, Russia, which we know is already done. And that will go for China, Taiwan, and then Israel, of course, being last.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Again, putting the breadcrumbs together, right? And trying to make sense out of it all.
Yeah.
So
That's what we see happening. And so, and you're right that the groups sort of several steps above us, if you will, are already transacting in the new financial system. It's just they have a very hard and set date that they're going to lay it out to the public in a very systematic way. But as we look at, as a team, including you, as we look at the landscape of things, you can't get to July 4th without all these other things circumventing. What is going to pay for the fares? The reset, the SAR, right? You don't think they're going to show med beds at those fairs? I'll put money on it that they will, and all the other patents that they're going to start rolling out to the public. Hey, want to see Fred get healed on the spot? Let me show you, or Jane, or whatever. And it sets up an amazing talk track for those people to go out and say, you should have seen what I just experienced. You had 181 hospitals not too long ago in Pennsylvania that just shut down errantly. Yes, they are facts. We fact checked it. That is accurate. And that's just one area because I have a friend from Pennsylvania. I checked and he said, yeah, they are starting to close hospitals here. So he's on the front lines. So just logically starting to put the piece together, it's telling its own story within a story that we can see where this yellow brick road, no pun intended, or maybe, is leading us to the inevitability of this time frame. So I think you're right in the sense that this really should hit its climax by the month of May.
Well, by the end of May, for sure.
Well, by the end of May, yeah, yeah. But my point being is that to sort of back up what you were saying about some of these bigger groups, you've got the private side that has to go before the public. Just like if you went at an airport and you were getting an airplane, you have your first class and your military and disabled. Those folks always go first before the general boarding. In a similar analogy, this is kind of the same thing. You have a pecking order, and I think the private groups are going to have to start going certainly this month, leading into the end of May into June. And remember, this is a nice palate cleanser, if you like, to the discussion. Ivanka had a tweet on X that's been actually gone viral. We've shared it in our Telegram. You've probably seen it. By the time June hits, the world's going to look radically different. To me, that would seem to suggest that this is all coming into focus.
Well, I saw that and I prayed it was not war, because it could be radically different because of war everywhere. I'm praying that's not true, because yeah, that doesn't follow the least amount of violence and death option.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is you just said that the military and the good guys have always been about the path of the least amount of collateral damage. So I'm going to go on the belief and supposition that it's more about the financial than the war side. It may look, as Kim Clement said, it may look like war, but in actuality, it's financial, because they need a lot of distractions to take people's eyes off of this. Look here, while this here is going on the other way. So,
Absolutely.
anything else you want to discuss, or any other thoughts you had?
I'm trying to think if there was anything more recent that's come up here in the Republic that would be worthwhile. Just that if anyone is interested in joining and taking a part, if God is putting it on your heart to volunteer, the best way to do that is to reach out directly to the state, because wherever you are actually living right now, the website, the members website, is still down. It's almost ready. We're working on it. But the easiest way to reach out is just to bypass it, which is what we would have done in the members website, is to send you to the state. So just go ahead and do that now. If it's a one-word state like Texas, Iowa, Indiana, you just put Texas at, all the suffixes are the same. Republic for the United States of America.org. And then the front part is just the state. And if it happens to be two, like North Dakota, New Jersey, then it's new _ Jersey, North _ Dakota at, and then the same thing.
Okay.
So I can send that to you, or if you want to put it in the comments. But
Yeah, I'll send it to me and I'll put it in our
that's the
description.
easiest, best, fastest way to get in touch with your officials in the Republic in your state. And we'll answer you, and we'll take it from there. You can have a conversation about what positions are available and what does God want you to do. That's really where it is. We need the people to come forward now. Maybe they were sitting on the sidelines because they didn't feel like where they would fit in, and then suddenly this just sounds right. And we need the ones with the best God's discernment, because you're going to have to figure out who's telling you the truth and who's not. Which republic sounds like a republic and which one does not.
Right.
And yeah, so we are staying true to the original plan, as much as the splinter group wants to say, oh, we're, the original republic has strayed and we need to break off and we need to, be the real republic. And it's like, you guys don't have a clue how to do that. Zero clue how to do that. Just look at your fruits. Look at what you're saying, what you're doing. So that's where we're at. And we would love to have anyone step forward and say hi. And you can decide whether or not to get involved after you have a conversation. There's no obligation. It's just, learn about it and all that.
Thank you. And I'll get the link from you. We'll put it in the description. No problem. Any final thoughts or encouragement or anything you want to share with the audience?
Just that we're entering some very interesting times.
Hmm.
With the probable disruption in the logistics supply chain, whether or not the stuff with China ends up happening or not, we don't have American companies that can fill in the gaps because we've become so reliant on imports. If you've got the opportunity to buy supplies that you would have for a 1 week blizzard, snowstorm, tornado, earthquake, whatever, go ahead and do that now and just have it available. And then that's peace of mind. You know, you've got that to back up yourself. And if something does happen, you're good to go. If something doesn't happen, you had that insurance this whole time.
Yeah.
So, if you do reach out to the Republic and we still have internet and we still have email and the rest of that, you will have the opportunity to speak with like-minded patriots and share information and find out where are the supplies located in your area, et cetera. That's the kind of stuff that we're going to be helping people with. So we are already on a major project helping the people of the hurricane in North Carolina. We've just expanded out to Virginia, Tennessee areas that were hit the hardest and providing them with essentially water filters. Now, these are commercial, professional grade filters that will take any contaminated water and purify it. So this is state of the art stuff, and we're doing that for free. So kind of like our own FEMA, but we don't like FEMA, so we don't call ourselves that. But
Right.
this is a Republic relief effort for sure. And if someone wants to get involved in that, again, write to your state and we'll get connected.
That's great. Just a personal question of curiosity to finish up. Do you think my understanding was always that National Guard troops were sort of positioned in every respective state. Do you think they're going to be there as a point of redundancy for the people who don't have the ability to get themselves 3 to 7 days worth of supplies?
So of course, the good guy National Guard, who knows how many good guys, bad guys, intermediate, that we actually have. But the good guys will be helping for sure. How much they're able to help, your guess is as good as mine. We can hope that the Republic will be stood up about that same time, because then we will know who the good guys are by that point.
Hmm.
But don't know for sure.
That's fair. Just also last minute financial thing is 31 Ian Jurger of X just reported that 31% of the IRS's tax auditors quit following Doge's downsizing. So you can see clearly Trump is moving us from the IRS to the ERS with the tariffs, which he also noticed he's upped it from 150 to 200,000. That's on purpose. Next it'll be 500,000, then 1,000,000, and it will go to everyone. And this will include property tax, which is unconstitutional. You know that, as a national excise tax. I mean, what was that in the first place? Charging people for their cars? I mean, are you kidding me? And then New Yorkers got to love that. And then not only income tax, but capital gains, because that's really critical for the currencies and the cryptos, which obviously we know how much infrastructure is being poured into the new system. It just, from a practicality standpoint, if people get a ton of money, which they will, if it's taxed to death, they're less likely to put it into the economy, and they're going to try to find, tax shelters. It's traditionally what the default was. Not going to have to worry about that anymore because that's been insulated. So for those of you concerned about your cryptos or your currencies being taxed, you don't need to, because you never paid a tax on it. You paid a broker fee. That's what you paid. Most people don't know the difference. There is one.
And I think we talked about this briefly last time. Everyone is going to get back every federal and state income tax that they ever paid.
Yep.
And once that's taken care of, then they're going to figure out how much your ancestors paid.
Mm-hmm.
Have that go into some sort of a account, heritage account or whatever, and then figure out, who's still alive, what kids, grandkids, whatever. So, but those will be going into the trusts, because obviously we can't just give $5 million to every human being in the country and say, have fun, because it doesn't work that way, right? So it'll have to be some sort of graduated thing so that we don't drive up hyperinflation and all the other things that can happen from something like that. So, yeah.
Well, We
Interesting.
also have to count, Sandy, for, since you brought that up, we also have to account for, we are going to have a period of hyperinflation, but what he's going to do, I'm talking about this year, what he's going to do is he's going to lower energy costs at the pump and at the grocery store, right? And then giving people back this money will help offset that. So eventually a dollar, the correct dollar, the US note will be worth what it's supposed to be, backed by assets and not worthless fiat, which fluctuates because of control and interest and cabal stuff, right? But yeah, I think it would be a
Have
graduated.
you seen the Fort Knox visit yet? I don't think they've done the Fort
They
Knox.
haven't done it yet. They're going to.
They
And
keep saying-
immediately, well, that's coming, but immediately after that, they'll audit the Fed because they've already got a lot of groundswell support. Mike Lee from Utah is already supporting that. Elon Musk is supporting that. Again, they're beating the drum beat of the narrative for the public, right? So we've got to get as many people on board as possible. But yeah, absolutely. And again, folks, if you do have foreign currencies, which we recommend, obviously dinar, dong, zim, Thai baht, Venezuelan bolivar, rupiah, and the whole lot of the other 200 plus countries, or you're trying to add to the cachet of what you have, we have a great resource for that on our channel, and we'll leave that link in the description for you as our chief sponsor. Cindy Miarecki, thank you for joining us, my dear. Always a pleasure. Thank you for your service, support, and knowledge base. Always an honor to have you, and we look forward to seeing you again in the not too distant future.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thanks. God bless.